Before 40, everything is rehearsal. Real life starts now. When Carl Jung brought up the idea that life really begins at 40, a lot of people turned up their noses. It even seems like a provocation, right? But with in-depth psychology, this makes absurd sense. Until then, according to him, we are much more concerned with fitting in than with really knowing ourselves. It's as if the first half of life was a big rehearsal, and the main piece hadn't even started yet. Think with me, how many decisions have you made so far thinking about what others expected? Career, relationships, lifestyle. All kind of guided by an invisible manual. Jung saw this as a natural part of personal development, a necessary phase. But there comes a time when this logic begins to fail, and that's when the so-called crisis of 40 appears, almost like an internal call for change. And here comes a powerful point: individuation. This central concept in Jung's work talks about becoming who you really are, and not just who you were molded to be. In other words, middle age is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of true self-knowledge. This is when the collective unconscious begins to knock on the door, bringing deeper questions about life purpose, personal fulfillment, and the meaning of life. There is a silent narrative that we absorb from an early age that youth is the pinnacle of life. Everything revolves around her energy, beauty, opportunities, achievements. But if you stop to observe with a little more awareness, you will realize that this idea is more of a cultural construction than an absolute truth. With in-depth psychology, this exaggerated valuation can even delay true self-knowledge. The problem is that, by putting youth on this pedestal, many people panic when they start to age. That feeling of the best is over arises, when, in reality, perhaps the best has not even started yet. It's almost like investing all your resources in the facade of the house and forgetting to build a solid foundation. And without basis, any stronger wind shakes everything. And that's precisely where the crisis of the 40s begins to make sense. Because it dismantles this illusion and forces you to look inside. It's not about losing something, but about finally seeing what really matters. Personal development is no longer superficial and starts to touch deeper layers, those linked to the meaning of life, to the shadow psychology, and to the true purpose of life. If you look at it honestly, the first 40 years of life are almost like a big laboratory. It is there that we test paths, make mistakes, learn by force, and gradually shape an identity. In Carl Jung's view, this phase is essential not as a final destination, but as a preparation. It is the terrain where personal development begins to take shape, even if unconsciously. At this stage, a lot is built based on external references: family, culture, school, society. You learn what should be, what works, and what gets accepted. But in the midst of all this, self-knowledge is still shallow. The persona is being formed, that version of you that adapts to the world, while deeper parts, linked to the shadow psychology and the collective unconscious, are half hidden behind the scenes. And there's nothing wrong with that, see? On the contrary, this construction phase is necessary to give you a repertoire. But there comes a time when all this begins to be questioned. What once seemed solid is beginning to show signs of wear. And it is exactly this accumulation of experiences, successes, and stumbles that will serve as fuel for individuation down the road, making room for a more authentic search for life purpose and personal fulfillment. For a good part of life, we enter almost without realizing it into a silent game, that of seeking external approval all the time. It's as if there were an invisible scoreboard evaluating our choices: career, money, status, even the way we live. And, within this logic, personal development ends up being guided more by the recognition of others than by true self-knowledge. Have you ever noticed how certain decisions feel right, but just because they are well regarded? Choosing a safe profession, keeping up appearances, following standards, all this strengthens the persona, that social mask that Carl Jung described. The problem is that, as the persona grows, the connection with the meaning of life becomes more and more distant, almost like a whisper ignored in the back of the mind. And here comes the turning point. There comes a time when this external validation no longer fills in. Even with achievements, something seems to be missing. It is at this moment that many people begin to feel the beginning of the 40s crisis. Not as weakness, but as a clear sign that the collective unconscious and shadow aspects psychology are asking for attention, setting the stage for a deeper search for life purpose and personal fulfillment. There comes a time when, even with everything seemingly in place, something starts to bother you inside. Stabilized career, paid bills, maybe even recognition. But, even so, a void arises that is difficult to explain. This feeling is more common than it seems in middle age, and in Carl Jung's view, it's not a mistake, it's a sign. An inner call to look beyond the surface. It's as if what once motivated you simply loses its strength. External achievements no longer bring the same satisfaction, and the question, is that all? Begins to echo more frequently. This is a crucial point of self-knowledge, because it reveals that personal development based only on external validation has a limit. And when that limit arrives, emptiness appears not to bring you down, but to redirect you. Instead of running away from this discomfort, the most powerful way is to face it. Simple questions can open deep doors. What really makes sense to me today? Or what parts of me have I left out over the years? It is in this dive that concepts such as individuation, shadow psychology, and the collective unconscious begin to come to life, leading you to a more authentic search for life purpose, personal fulfillment, and meaning in life. The famous crisis of the 40s is usually seen almost as a collapse. But what if, in fact, it is an awakening? In Carl Jung's view, this moment is not about losing control, but about finally seeing what was hidden. That's when the autopilot fails and you find yourself forced to take the wheel of your own life, even if it gives you butterflies in your stomach. Many people try to stifle this call, change cars, make impulsive purchases, seek distractions. Nothing against a treat from time to time, of course. But the point here is different. The crisis of 40 calls for depth, not distraction. It is the beginning of a dive into self-knowledge, where personal development is no longer about appearance and becomes about essence, and this involves facing the shadow psychology without filters. If you want to start practically, try something simple. Set aside 10 minutes a day to write down everything you're feeling, without censorship. Another powerful suggestion is to read Man and His Symbols, by Jung himself, a great portal to understand the collective unconscious. Gradually, you will realize that this chaos has direction. And that, behind it, there is a clear invitation to individuation, aligning you with your true life purpose, personal fulfillment, and meaning of life. Now we enter the heart of depth psychology, individuation. For Carl Jung, this is the most important process of adult life, becoming who you really are, without masks, without ready-made scripts. It sounds simple to say, right? But, in practice, it is one of the most challenging paths of personal development, because it requires courage to get out of the automatic and face the truth itself. Individuation begins when you stop living only for the persona and start listening to what comes from within. This includes forgotten desires, ignored talents, and even inner conflicts that you've avoided for years. It's like rearranging an old house. You have to open doors that were closed, go through things that were stored, and sometimes deal with what is not so comfortable. At this point, self-knowledge ceases to be theory and becomes daily practice. A simple way to start this process is to pay attention to the patterns in your life. Ask yourself, why do I repeat certain choices? Or what do I always avoid facing? Another powerful practice is to observe your dreams. Jung saw in them a direct bridge to the collective unconscious. Gradually, you realize that the crisis of 40 was not a problem, but a portal. A clear invitation to align your life with your true life purpose, achieving more personal fulfillment and a deeper sense of life. At some point in life, we all create an acceptable version of who we are. The one that works well in public, that pleases, that avoids conflicts. Within Carl Jung's depth psychology, this has a name: persona. And no, it is not a bad thing. In fact, it is essential for us to live in society. The problem starts when we believe that this mask is all we are. Think of that automatic behavior at work or at social gatherings, where you kind of get into character. That's the persona in action. But over time, if you identify too much with it, you end up moving away from your true self. Self-knowledge becomes superficial, and personal development starts to revolve around maintaining an image and not really evolving. It's like living on a stage, without ever leaving the spotlight. And it is precisely in middle age, often during the crisis of 40, that this structure begins to crack. That carefully constructed image no longer supports everything. A discomfort arises, a feeling of disconnection. And that's great because it makes room for individuation. Gradually, you begin to differentiate who you are from who you have learned to be, getting closer to a more authentic life purpose, a deeper personal fulfillment, and a meaning of life that really makes sense to you. Now we come to one of the most intense and transformative parts of depth psychology: the shadow psychology. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is everything that you have repressed, denied, or simply did not want to see in yourself. Fears, insecurities, envy, anger. But also hidden talents and untapped potentials. In other words, it's not just the bad side, it's everything that was left in the dark. The big challenge is that no one likes to face this part. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even scary. But ignoring the shadow doesn't make it go away, it only causes it to manifest itself in indirect ways, such as emotional outbursts, self-sabotage, or repetitive patterns. Therefore, true self-knowledge requires this inner confrontation. This is where personal development stops being light and motivational, and it becomes real. If you want to start, try something practical: watch your overreactions. Do you know when something small annoys you too much? Often, there is a piece of your shadow asking for attention. Another tip is to write about situations that bother you and others. This can reveal a lot about yourself. This process, although challenging, is essential for individuation. And the more you integrate these parts, the closer you get to a genuine life purpose, true personal fulfillment, and a more complete meaning of life. As the years go by, especially in middle age, something begins to change almost silently. What once seemed essential, such as status, recognition, and external achievements, loses some of its luster. And it's not a lack of ambition, see? It is evolution. In Carl Jung's view, this movement is a natural part of the individuation process, where the focus leaves the having and begins to turn to the being. You start to value experiences more than appearances, more real connections than social validation. Simple things take on a different weight: a deep conversation, a moment of silence, a day with someone you like. This is a clear sign of maturity and self-knowledge. Personal development is no longer a race and becomes a more conscious journey, aligned with your life purpose. An interesting practice here is to review your priorities intentionally. Take a piece of paper and write, "What really matters to me today?" Then, compare it to how you live your day-to-day. Is there coherence? Small adjustments already make a difference, such as reducing time in empty activities and investing more in something meaningful. This type of choice will gradually bring you closer to a more authentic personal fulfillment and a meaning of life that does not depend on external approval. At some point in this journey, the question changes completely. It is no longer how to succeed, but why all this. And this is where ideas from Viktor Frankl and Abraham Maslow come into force, complementing Carl Jung's vision. Both show that human beings need meaning in life, not just achievements. Without it, even the most successful life can feel empty. Frankl, for example, argued that the purpose of life can be found even in the most difficult situations, and it doesn't have to be something grandiose. Sometimes it's in small things, helping someone, creating something meaningful, or simply living with integrity. Maslow, on the other hand, talked about self-realization, that level at which you seek to be the best version of yourself. Do you see how this connects with individuation and self-knowledge? To bring this to practice, try a simple exercise at the end of the day. Ask yourself, what did I do today that really meant it? It may seem basic, but this question, repeated often, reprograms your way of living. Gradually, personal development is no longer about external goals and is guided by internal values. And that's exactly what brings you closer to true personal fulfillment, setting the stage for an even more aligned new beginning. There is an almost invisible turn that happens in middle age. That feeling of starting over that once seemed scary begins to take on a new meaning. In Carl Jung's view, this moment is not an end. It is a liberation. After years of following standards, expectations, and building an identity, you finally get the chance to live more authentically. The most interesting thing is that, now, your choices are much more conscious. You've experienced enough to know what makes sense, and what doesn't. Self-knowledge deepens, individuation is strengthened, and personal development is no longer an anxious search to become a more aligned construction. It's as if, for the first time, you're writing your own story, without needing anyone's approval. If you want to take a practical step, start small. Take back something you left behind, try a new path, or simply say no to what no longer suits you. Midlife offers this freedom. And the more you embrace this process, the closer you get to a real-life purpose, consistent personal fulfillment, and a meaning of life that is born from within, not from without. Have you ever had the feeling that you are living on autopilot? As if you were doing everything right, but, deep down, something doesn't fit? That silent restlessness that appears out of nowhere and makes you think, is that all? Well, perhaps you are closer to starting to live for real than you think. Most people believe that life happens in youth, that's where everything matters. But what if this idea is completely inverted, and if the first few years are just a preparation, and the real game starting later? That's exactly what Carl Jung proposed, a provocative vision that completely changes the way we view middle age, the 40-year-old crisis, and the very meaning of life. In this content, you will discover how self-knowledge, individuation, and even moments of doubt can actually be signs that you are on the right path. Let's explore how depth psychology reveals that emptiness, discomfort, and questioning are not problems. They are invitations to a life with more life purpose, personal fulfillment, and authenticity. So if you feel like something inside you is crying out for change, or if you simply want to better understand who you really are, stay with me until the end, because what you're going to notice here may not only change your way of thinking, but completely transform the way you lived. After all this, let me ask you honestly, are you living the life that really makes sense to you? Or just following a script that one day was delivered to you? At what point did you start to move away from who you really are? And most importantly, what can you do today, even if small, to reconnect with your true self? The journey of self-knowledge, individuation, and personal development does not happen overnight, but it starts with a simple decision to look inward honestly. Perhaps the crisis of 40 is not a problem to be solved, but a call to be answered. A direct invitation for you to rebuild your life with more life purpose, more personal fulfillment, and a sense of life that truly resonates with who you are. Now tell me, you will ignore this call, or will it start to act? If this content made sense to you, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way, you don't miss the next videos that will help you delve even deeper into this transformation journey.